Hello there, my name is Scott Douglas, and I'm very excited to be making this little presentation about additional language socialization frameworks, particularly for short-term study abroad. So without further ado, let's get this short little presentation started. So before I get started though, I just want to say thank you to the organizers of this conference, the JALT Study Abroad SIG. I've been a member for a few years now, but I feel like a little bit of an interloper coming to you from British Columbia. But I really appreciate this opportunity, and I've been a member for a few years now, and I've always really enjoyed these events. So kudos to the organizers. So as I mentioned, I'm from British Columbia, and so I just want to say to everybody, "Way chas chalachalt," which in Silikchin, our local language here in the Okanagan Valley, just means hello, good day. I also will say "Way pachiap," which means you have all arrived and everything is possibility. And so those are our greetings from the Okanagan Valley. So there you go. As you can see, this is where I live in British Columbia on the traditional territory of the Syilx Okanagan peoples. And I hope one day, post-pandemic, you'll be able to come and visit me here in the BC interior and we can show off our beautiful part of the world. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be looking at some of the benefits and challenges of short-term study abroad. We're going to be thinking about what is academic language socialization, and we're also going to have a bit of look at what are the elements of short-term study abroad programs that are beneficial based on this framework of additional language socialization. Yeah, we're talking about additional language socialization. And then we'll have a bit of a peek at the future. So, short-term study abroad, what is it? So a lot of these programs, they're quite short, right? They can be anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks in length. There's all kinds of variables that are involved in these programs, but they can be quite an attractive option because they're so short they can fit into students' programs of study. Of course, though, they still involve a considerable investment in time and money and effort, so we want to make sure that we're doing the best possible job we can with these programs to help support students reach their goals, right? There are a number of benefits that have been shown to short-term study abroad. There's a number of language benefits. But what's interesting for me are those extra linguistic benefits as well, in terms of how, because you can imagine, particularly for many of us at this conference, our students, they're at that crossroads, right, between adolescence and young adulthood. And as they're learning to make their way in the world, these programs can have quite an impact on the friends they make and their growing maturity levels and the knowledge they're getting about the wider world. There are some challenges though, although there are all those benefits. Sometimes there's mismatched expectations between the students and the program. Sometimes too, they really hope for these encounters with local people, but they might not always happen naturally. And there might even be misunderstandings as well. So why am I talking about, and this is academic again, I wanted to say additional language socialization. So why am I talking about additional language socialization today? Well, I thought it might be a framework for boosting some of those benefits of short-term study abroad and mitigating some of those drawbacks. So socialization itself, what does that mean? Well, socialization, this is that process, right, of becoming part of a group and learning how to become part of a group. And it's an interactive and active process that we're changing over time as we become a member of a group or socialized into another community. Additional language socialization. So what does that mean though? So this is where we're learning our additional language and we're also becoming part of the community that uses that language, right? And so we're learning an additional language and we're using that language to become part of a community. And as we're becoming part of a community, we're actually learning more of the language. But it's not just about language learning. It's also about learning the knowledge of the host community or the target community, the cultural practices, and things such as that, right? And so, but the key here is interaction, right? It's an interactional process where newcomers are becoming more competent community members through this interaction with other people who are helping them gain this language and culture and knowledge about a new community. So I think this is an interesting framework for understanding study abroad experiences. They can accommodate all those multiple variables that exist in a short-term study abroad program. And it also helps us understand how learners are developing their language through their interactions with other people, and how they're also developing their cultural knowledge and their social skills, their ideological knowledge, and their sense of identity and things such as that. So you can get a sense, I think, so far that in additional language socialization frameworks, interaction is the key, right? Because this is how we gain our social, cultural, and linguistic skills when we are interacting with other people. And these other people generally have different levels of competence than us, and so we learn from them, but also they are learning from us too when we're involved in this process. In study abroad situations, so what you're looking at then is students who are entering into a host community, and they're developing their language skills so that they can communicate within that host community, and learn more about the local culture and knowledge practices. So in this, it involves being socialized into a social group, as I mentioned, and language development is impacted by the activities that take place during the short-term study abroad experience. And so you can see, I think, that the language development and the social development are tightly interwoven, right? And language is one of the main tools for communicating within the host community. Social development and linguistic development go hand in hand, right, as they're entering into the local communities. And as I mentioned before, the impact is not just on the learners, but it's also on the people with whom they're talking, right? So there's this exchange of knowledge, and it's a multi-directional socialization. So students are learning as they enter into a new community, but also the host community, we're learning from students as they come and they interact with us. And so it's quite interesting to see how there's these positive benefits for both people involved in the additional language socialization process. Learners themselves too have agency and control over this process. They can either boost it, or they may choose not to take part in it. They may resist the process as well. And this can lead to challenges. Sometimes the challenges are because the learners don't want to participate, but also they may lack these opportunities for interaction that are so important for additional language socialization. As I mentioned, learners may be uncomfortable or not motivated, and they might not want to participate. Or maybe their language skills are at a level that may inhibit communication, and things like that could happen. So, based on this very brief overview of an additional language socialization framework, what are some of the ideal elements of a short-term study abroad program? So, well, you're looking for those interactions, right? So you want scaffolded interactions to create rich intercultural encounters. You're also looking for ways to help students understand the host community that they're entering into. And you want to create cultural events and knowledge learning events as well, because it's more than just language learning, right? And so we want these frequent and meaningful intercultural encounters. What are some of the other implications then for instruction? Well, there's all kinds of implications that are involved here, but I think when you're creating the program, you want to think carefully about how you're going to be supporting students as they're entering into a new community. So, what does the future hold? This is a little picture of an empty classroom. So, as you know, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. However, I'm hopeful for the future when we'll be able to welcome once again people from overseas onto our campus, and we'll be able to fill these classrooms again. I think now it's a bit of a pause where we can think about how we can improve these programs, right? And so we can use additional language socialization as a framework for developing meaningful short-term study abroad experiences. And I think that in this way, we can leverage meaningful community interactions to help not only develop students' language skills, but also increase their cultural knowledge and their situated understandings of the place that they're visiting. And so there you go. As I mentioned, I'm Scott, and that was my presentation, exactly 10 minutes. If this kind of thing interests you, check out our graduate programs here at the University of British Columbia, and particularly on my campus, the Okanagan campus. But thank you very much. During the conference, I'll be happy to share my slides as well as my references that I so quickly went over. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.